Welcome back everyone to the Himalayan webinar series. Today I'm going to take you on a magical journey deep inside Zanskar along the Tsarab River Valley as part of module 18 in this ongoing series. As usual, we are live every morning at 8 o'clock on Zoom, and videos are posted on Insta TV, YouTube and Facebook. Here you can see the beautiful Tsarab River Valley. Somewhere just after mid-August 2019, when there was a sudden rainfall or snowfall here, as you can see, above 4,000 meters on the high ranges. This is Zanskar, a high-altitude desert, rain shallow area normally, so very little vegetation here, all barren dust, rocks, and sand. In between, very remotely here, almost 2 days from the nearest roadhead, you can see a remote farming hamlet, which now has fallen into ruins, has become a ghost town, as the residents have left more than a decade ago in search for an easier existence, easy money in the cities, compared to the hardship of this remote, barren existence. Here you see another picture more downstream as the Tsarab River cuts deeper and actually becomes almost a canyon deep inside the Zanskarian mountains near Uktal Gompa. Our journeys will start near Sarchu along the Manali-Leh highway. Sarchu is located along the Yunam River, which flows from the Baralachala. We'll then join the Tsarab River Valley and then head on a 2-3 day journey to the most remote sections of Zanskar. Explore some of these deserted settlements, farming settlements like Satok, to finally climb up on 2 high altitude passes, 5,000 meter plus, the Kotundala and the Niala Constela, to finally hit into the Lumen Valley, from where we finally exit to Uktal Gompa, again almost 1 day ahead from the nearest roadhead. Let's take a look at the major streams or rivers that flow to this barren high altitude desert. So most of this upper section is actually Zanskar. And then here below, almost the white line, you can say we have Sarchu and we have Lahol. Mayat Valley also we discussed yesterday as part of Lahol. So Zanskar starts somewhere draining the high ranges between Spiti and Lahol, and flows here near Sarchu, where there is a major confluence with the Yunam, which drains the Baralachala, also picks up the Lingtuchu on the left side. Then the Tsarab River basically flows straight north into the interior Zanskarian mountains, where you can see the Manali-Leh highway climbs up here for people who are familiar on the Gata loops towards Pang and then further Leh Ladakh. Along its way, Tsarab will take a strong left where it gets joined by the Zarachu, a major river draining a large area here on the left side of the Manali-Leh highway west of Pang. So then it proceeds further deeper inside until it's joined by the Lumen River coming from the Zanskar side. And then finally here joins the main southeast Zanskar Valley, the Kuryak Chu, which flows south to north. Becomes the Lungnak River till it flows to Padum, the main town in Zanskar, where it becomes the Zanskar River. So this gives you an overall idea. The scale here is pretty big. We talk about 100 kilometers left to right. So you can imagine that the amount of water current in these major streams is enormous as they cut through narrow canyons and gorges in this highly erosive landscape. And you can also imagine during peak summer, during peak snowmelt, or when there is a cloudburst like last summer, mid-August, that these streams really become dangerous water canals, impossible to cross. Okay, along the Tsarab River, we'll be crossing a couple of, I call them Tsarab 1, Tsarab 2, a couple of saddles, which is like 300-400 meter climb above the river, where the trail has been completely washed along the base of the river. And then on the second part, where the trail is completely gone before it finally joins the Lumen River, there we have to climb up very steeply to 2 high altitude passes, the Kotundala and the Niala Constela. I mean, this 3,900 is wrong here, it should be some 4,900. Okay, so how do we find the way? This trail is pretty remote and undocumented, even though you still see some hiking parties with horses, European hikers going through this section, and it's extremely beautiful. To find, I mean, plot your route, basically, you'll have to zoom into the satellite maps, which we can see here, a small trail going high above it through this highly erosive, landslide-prone slopes of the Tsarap River Valley. Here again, we see on Google Earth map. So we start from the Sarchu site where the Tsarap River flows. It's almost a three-day hike. Deep inside the Zanskarian Mountains. Here we have to cross the tributary, the Zarachu, which will be a main challenge along this traverse. And then finally, at this point, we leave actually the Tsarap River where it flows straight towards the Lumen, climbing over two high passes of Kutundala and Yala Constala, which are part of the Hemis National Park here. We have the village of Shadi, like the most remote village in Zanskar, 2 days away from the nearest roadhead, which we'll discuss in one of the upcoming modules, the Zanskar Traverse. Here then, after joining the Lumen, it takes a left turn again towards our destination, Puktal Gompa, a remote Buddhist monastery deep inside Zanskar, 1 day away from any roadheads. Okay, so maybe we'll take a quick look on Google Earth again. Here we see the same Western Himalayas, Uttarakhand, Himachal, and then Jammu and Kashmir here, which is partly Zanskar, partly Ladakh, and here we have Lahaul, which is part of Himachal still. So if you look at the Hemis National Park here, roughly again we have Ladakh on top, Zanskar on the bottom here, and Lahaul on the right side. So if we zoom into the Manali-Leh highway, we have the town, not the town, the temporary shelters here, Dabas of Sarchu along the the Yunam River flowing from the Barachala, joined here by the Sarap River as it already comes a long way from the high ranges between Spiti and Lahaul. So we then basically proceed along the Manali-Leh highway for some time until the Manali-Leh highway here then climbs up. This is called the Gata loops, lots of loops, hairpin bends towards the next pass on the way to Pang. So we'll resume from the Gata loops along a small trail that follows this Sarap River Valley. You can see even though it's a high altitude desert, still you have some, wherever there is a side stream, actually you'll have some kind of vegetation, some small bushes, trees, and plants along the way. You can see here a steel blue river, as you saw on one of my earlier posts on Instagram. So the river the water is crystal clear blue, which gives like a beautiful contrast with the orange-brown surrounding landscape, but also becomes like dark brown as the amount of water increases and it becomes like ferocious. After a while, it starts cutting deeper into the landscape where the trail will climb up steeply here on the right side, 300 meters above the Tsarap River Valley, and climb to several saddles and side valleys here. Very beautiful views from those points before we again descend into the valley where we'll come across some of these ancient settlements that you can see here. You can see the farmlands here, and you'll typically find these settlements wherever there is a side stream joining it, providing irrigation for their farmlands. You can see left and right along the Sarap River, you will have these small areas, which are actually all ancient farming settlements that have now completely been abandoned. Sometimes you'll still see ruins of houses, like you're walking back in history. Voila, here we come to Mune, one more settlement along another side stream, and then we finally proceed further to the major intersection where we have the Zarachu joining from the Pang side, draining the Zanskar and Ladakh high ranges near Pang. The Sarap River, as you can see, cuts deeper and deeper into the landscape until the trail completely is washed away here and the bridges, where we basically will have to take a right valley and climb up steeply across two high altitude passes of the Gutundala and the Nyala Constala, giving spectacular views here into the inner Hemis National Park, which we'll be discussing later on. You also have a very remote village of Shadi, which we'll check in the following traverse. From the Nyala Constala, we get down in the Lumen River Valley, which flows from interior Zanskar. And again, we've joined here towards Sarap River a little bit further, using some bridges which are still intact to eventually end up at Darcha and Puktal Gompa, our destination, before we enter the Purne here in the Lugnak River Valley and the village of Char. Okay, that's quite a little bit of geography, but I think it's important that you understand where we are gonna be heading to. Here you can see Sarchu, one of these Daba settlements, 20-30 Dabas along the Manali-Leh highway, where I think from Lahore you slowly enter into Ladakh. So you have some checkposts here, state checkposts. Pack up 2-3 days of food here and let's go. You continue along the highway, take a hitch on a lorry until the Manali-Leh highway here steeply climbs up along the Gata loops towards the Pang site. We proceed further into this beautiful Sarab River Valley here. Initially, you can see it's a beautiful wide open valley, quite a bit of vegetation there on the sides. And you can see trails actually going both on the left side and the right side. We'll mostly stay on the right side, even though there will be bridges connecting settlements on both sides of the Sarab River Valley. The river, as you can see, cuts deeply into these surrounding barren high ranges of the high altitude desert of Zanskar. Let's take a small video on the opening section of Sarab.
After reaching Barachala and getting a ride to the Gata loops, we started following the Sarab River. Along the way we found some a first deserted settlement around 5-6 k, and now on the other side of the river what appears to be another kind of ancient settlement with no signs of life, no cultivation around, maybe deserted over the years, who knows.
Voila. So as we then proceed, you'll see that the river actually becomes more deeply cut into the landscape. Here we can see a usual thing which you see in a couple of places. It's like a big, a tall circular kind of area in which they actually trap wild wolves by putting some sheep inside this deep enclosure, basically, so that the wolf jumps inside and then it's not able to get out again. You can see a lot of bones there inside that thing. Here we can also see wildlife on the way. This is where we camped somewhere on the first day near the Sarab River. Mostly a large cat species, pointing to possibly a snow leopard. A bit scary because we slept there the previous night. Again, as we get deeper inside, you can see it becomes more steep. So the trail goes a little bit higher up as it's too much of erosion near the river. After a while, finally, as I mentioned in Google Earth, right, we'll be crossing several saddles, some 200-300 meters above the Sarab River before dipping down again a bit further. As this section of the Sarab actually has become, you can still see trails down there. You can see trails on the opposite side of the valley, but those have probably become inaccessible over time. Here you can see a topographic section of the same Sarab River Valley as and we have these several saddles here marked by myself in OpenStreetMaps along above 300 meters above the valley. Here you can see the beautiful views as we climb up above those saddles of the Sarab River Valley below. The landscape is extremely weird, so different kind of texture of the rocks, different gradients. Sometimes makes you feel that you're in a different world here. In some places you can still see trees growing, which is almost unbelievable given the fact that there is very little rain water in this place. Here on the way we found a victim, possibly of a predator. This is a big full-grown ibex, wild goat, which has either been sick and died or has been attacked by a snow leopard possibly. As we proceed further, again, you can see the trail here going very steeply above through these landslides. You can also see some beautiful ancient trees which have been able to survive there for hundreds of years. And always a little bit of vegetation, of course, near the river where there is water presence, as well as near the side valleys where you have drinkable water to quench your thirst along this traverse. Let us go for a walk now above this valley. You can see it's pretty narrow. Be a bit careful. One wrong step here and you will slide down a few hundred meters, picking up speed until you land in the river. Complete barren landscape, like a desert, but then instead of the Sahara sand desert, it's more like a rock desert. Highly erosive landscape around us. Voila. Here again we can see like a Google Earth picture where you clearly see those, as the river runs, snakes from the left to the right, you can see all these ancient farming settlements actually on both sides of the Sarab River. Every of these flat places are basically irrigated by the side streams coming from the mountains, the side valleys. And then you have some old ruin houses where people used to stay during those times. Here we then proceed further and come across a couple of settlements. Of one major town is Satok. A bit further we have Munili, and then finally we'll be hitting the Zarachu side valley, where we have a major challenge to cross this big stream draining ports of Ladakh. Here you can see the farmlands of Satok, beautiful settlements. Here you can see the town itself, like it's some big royal looking hamlets, but as you can see, built from local materials, wooden sticks and a lot of rocks. Some of the bricks here are made from the local soil, dried soil, and completely fallen apart. I've read some blogs of 10, 13 years ago where the same place was already deserted during those times. So slowly by some rainfall and snow, melting snow on top of this in the winter, it slowly falls apart. Let's take a look at a video of this ghost town.
We are passing by Satok, a beautiful old settlement along the Sarab River valley, which seemed to have been deserted. People left because of global warming or city comforts, not sure. Let's take a look inside. Let's take a peek on the first floor here.
Beautiful place.
Seem to be various big rooms in this place. Here we're entering the main kitchen living room, which has beautiful views on the Sarab River Valley, and a beautiful kitchen here, which is falling apart. Small storage rooms. People have left in a hurry, left everything behind in search for better pastures.
Well, you can see that people actually have left everything behind. They even didn't bother to take all their utensils or their farming equipment, leaving everything behind almost in a hurry. They seem to have left, maybe because of some natural disaster. Here you can see that same beautiful kitchen room with beautiful views on the Sarab River Valley, completely abandoned. They have even left their kitchen and utensils and dabas behind here. Very sad to see. And slowly, especially the roof, which is built with wood, a lot of wood, is still slowly falling apart. Voila, as we proceed further then, and the Sarab cuts deeper and deeper into the landscape, we can see those bridges connecting those ancient farming settlements on both sides. You can see those flats areas wherever people would have been farming. This place would have been beautiful when the farms in the harvest was ready. This farming a stark contrast in this desert. Here you can see Munile, where I spent one night in another ruined house. A couple of small settlements here, completely abandoned again. You can also see sometimes on the opposite side a steep path running through almost vertical rock faces, beautifully made on top there, but over the years, as it becomes in disuse and not maintained anymore, is now probably uncrossable. Here another beautiful bridge over the Wild Sarab River. Remember the light blue color earlier? Here it has become like dark red during a cloudburst. This was during August 2019 after a severe rain burst when the whole Himalayas were flooded. So given the fact that Sarab has already picked up, it's probably like some 60-70 kilometers by this time, draining a huge vast area. So the amount of water that flows through these narrow gorges is humongous. You can see the bridges built from local materials again. This is too remote actually to bring modern concrete and steel. So they basically use these, stacking up these local rocks and then using trees stacked on top of each other to finally make a possible traverse connecting villages at both sides. Let's take a look at a small video of this place. Voila. So here again, you can see the Sarab, the forceful currents in the stream as it makes its way through this highly erosive landscape. Here then we come at a beautiful intersection between the Zarachu and the Sarab River. This is actually the Zarachu, where again, while we were trying to cross it, the amount of water is here enormous. The Zarachu drains a huge area already before it hits joins the Sarab River. And luckily here far away we could spot a little bridge across, a newly built bridge actually across the Zarachu, which otherwise can only be safely crossed when it's not too ferocious and with the help of horses mostly, as per the European hiking parties. So let's take a look here at the force of the water near the confluence of both rivers.
We are on the intersection of the Zarachu and the Sarab River. I just went a little bit upstream of the Zarachu ahead of on the screen to cross a newly constructed bridge. Unfortunately, no proper access paths, so a little bit scrambling along the slope. The force of the water on 13 August 2019 is quite heavy still. Normally people cross this joining section here with the Sarab River. That looks a little tricky to me. The currents and the speed of the water in Sarab is even more strong. Canyon style rock formations.
Voila, you can see the force in the Sarab River there. Here then you can see the bridge from the top, newly built bridge, but unfortunately neither that side, neither this side has proper access. So we need to scramble actually on both sides to reach either side of this newly built bridge. Anyway, better than dying while getting washed away in the Zarachu below. Voila, so here you can see that same crossing from the Zarachu, after which again we have to climb up a little bit and then get down along the Sarab River until we come to a settlement of Hormozd, where the trail finally gets completely landslided on the final section, and we have to climb in through a canyon style major side valley here, climb over the Kutundala and the Niala Constella to head back a bit further to the Sarab River. So here you can see that major side stream, as there is the Sarab River. You can see the trail. You're entering like an unearthly landscape here, coming in the side valley and then climbing up steeply through this amazing landscape, highly erosive landscape, to the Kutundala at some 4,900 meters. Let's take a small visual look here.
Today we're climbing up from the Sarab Valley towards the Kutundala at 5,050 meters, and 1,000-meter climb. Amazing landscape along the way. Kutundala should be there on the horizon.
Well, as you can see, like a different kind of planet that you're walking on the high ranges of Zanskar. Here, then we see the Kutundala, offering views on the interior Hemis National Park here, bordering Zanskar and Ladakh in the back. Complete no man's land, but a couple of interior streams here also that can only be explored, like say in September, when the amount of snow and glacial meltwater is less, so that you can cross the water in those valleys. This was a festive moment. Here I reached my 100 pas in 2019, so I picked up this skull, ibex skull, and posed for a victory selfie after doing 100 passes, growing a big beard by that time. Voila, and then amazing actually, even at this altitude of some 4,900 meter, complete barren landscape, you can still find beautiful flora. It almost looks like some medicinal kind of plants here growing in the middle of this rock desert. Finally, we come to the, here you can see some side valleys again, running from the Hemis National Park that will eventually join the Sarab River and the Lumen Valley. You can also see some beautiful bright colored blue ice lakes down in that same valley. And then finally climbing down from the Niala Constella into the Lumen Valley, basically here. So here you can see some cairns marking the way of this hiking route. Here you can see vegetation, which normally points to the presence of water. Then finally, the side valley exits in the Lumen Valley. Again, we have to cross bridges to cross all these wild streams. Here you have the Lumen Valley, which looks a little bit more vegetated, beautiful light lumen because it's beautifully brightly colored, which will join the muddy Sarab River a little bit further. Here I settled up a campsite after I came back from the Niala Constella with my little biwi here, a small campfire for cooking. Not much wood in the high altitude desert, so you make use of dry horse dung and yak poop to cook some food. Here are my usual noodles for day 3 and beyond, and some peanuts and chocolates to complement the lost sugars and salts. Voila, here we come then back on the Sarab River coming from the right side and the Lumen joining from the left side. In 2019, we saw some good work here by some Nepali workers reconstructing the landslided paths on the way to Pukhtal Gompa to the remote village of Shadi, which had become almost inaccessible. People had to really climb across the hills on the right side up there, as part of the trail to the village was completely landslided. Finally, we come at our destination, the beautiful remote Pukhtal Gompa, built on a near vertical slope, from where our next journey will start, the interior Zanskar traverse. Hope you enjoyed this section. If you want to know more day-to-day write-ups and blog posts, check my blog, ultrajourney.org, where you'll find detailed write-ups on these beautiful traverses. See you guys tomorrow for the next session.